Hello everyone. This is the first Monday in a new set when we will be painting berries and leaves, both of which seem to be a little late in appearing around here at the moment, so it's been a bit difficult finding something nice to paint. But I have found some rose hips and I'll be demonstrating those today. I've placed them in Oasis in front of me in as much of a natural way as I can possibly make them look. And what I would say is it's a good idea to take a photo of them if you find some in situ to remind you of the way that they actually sit naturally, because it's very tempting just to pop them in some Oasis or a jar or something and paint them in a very unnatural looking way, so be careful about that. These are the colours I'm going to use, lots of different colours actually, because not only are there different tones in the berries, there are also different colours in the leaves as well. I've also added in my composition some dead ones, some dried ones, and ones that are going over and have become discoloured. That way I'm going to get variation in my subject, and hopefully it won't look too uniform. So lots of colours, and I'm hoping to let them blend and create different tones for me throughout the painting. But obviously, depending on what you find, you can choose your own colours. But these are rose hips, and a bit more plentiful, it seems, at the moment than anything else. It's quite a full drawing that I've done with an all graphite soft pencil, holding it very loosely and creating not too detailed and precise a drawing, but just keeping it soft. And I want to paint it in a similar way. So I doubt very much whether I'll get it all done on the video, but you will see it finished at some point. I'll just have to see how it goes. So I've got a variety of reds here and yellows and so on. And I'm just going to look at the colours of my berries in front of me and work across from left to right. And I'm not going to work wet on wet to begin with. I want to get nice smooth edges. Obviously berries have smooth edges. And the reason I'm not wetting the whole of the berry is because I want to show the little light spots that you always see, the little shiny light spots within the berry. So this is quite a dark and quite an old looking one, so it's got some depth in it, and you don't need to copy each one exactly as you see it, just use them as a guide and take it from there. Dropping a little bit of water or lifting off here and there can bring you more light in, and not touching too much. I'm using the cadmiums because they are nice and bright, but I've also got some quinacridone red loosened up for the berries that I might want to put in without the ones that I haven't drawn, just for sort of a bit of background going on. So I'll just have to see how that goes. And I've also got alizarin going on as well, because that gives a darker red quite easily wherever I might need it. Right, so what I'll try and do as I go along, I think, And I've got some sepia and some, this is sepia, and some neutral tint loosened up to pop in the very dark. And because these are quite old ones, these have lost the green and they're actually looking quite dark, which I'm quite happy about. I quite like this depth that I can see in these berries here. I could create some, with the more lively berries, I think I could put some green in quite happily. So I'll make it up a little bit as I go along. So I've got cad-free red deep here. Not much red in this little one here that's all dried up and looking sorry for itself. So I'm going to go straight in with some depth of colour here. Really very little red in that one. That's very dark. But it's still got a little bit of shine, but not much. That's had its day, that one. But these little tendrils at the top here, the little leaves that have dried up, are taking on some lovely shapes. So they're quite nice to actually paint either with your sword brush or just the very tip of the brush that you're using. I'm using a size 7 brush here, which is sort of medium-sized one. If you get too big, it isn't going to help you to get the smooth edges, so. Right, there's one hiding behind some leaves here. A little bit of depth in it. But not so much, and because it's sort of further back into the distance, I've not put too much colour into it. Kept that one a bit softer. So the shiny areas are different on each one, so you can kind of make that up as you go along really and just see how that goes. You don't have to follow exactly what you see in front of you. But what I am trying to do is to avoid monotony. Because I've got so many berries to paint here, I want to try to avoid monotony so that they're not all looking alike. There's a nice red one in the front here, so I'll keep that one looking quite fresh. Nice bit of shine on it. I've kept my drawing looking quite strong for you to see what I've done. Right, a little bit of alizarin there for a dark side. Darker side. Tiny little bit of the purple as well. I've got Windsor Violet out for some of the darker patches, which actually makes quite a nice colour. So let the brush do the work for you when it comes to these little areas here. Just lift the brush up to its point and you'll get a nice sharp point appearing. And there's a little patch of good ones here, so I think I'll paint those next. So getting further towards the foreground here, I'm getting a bit brighter. A little bit more colour in this one. I think I'll photograph my arrangement for you because it's quite a nice selection of different sorts of colours and shapes. Just in case you can't get hold of anything yourself, then, you know, just work from the photograph. But obviously, if you can, it's so much better if you can work from life. We've been working from photographs with the buildings and things, but now's a good chance to get some life to paint. Right, I think I can go a little bit greener, perhaps, on these more lively berries here, and the little leaves have not dried up and died quite so much, so any opportunity that you can find to put in a little bit of variety, then do. Otherwise you end up with a boring picture. But maybe don't make these a really, really bright green straight from the tube. You must be careful to actually put other colours in your mixes, in your green mixes, so that you don't use garish colours with your greens. It's always tricky, but it's important. The eye always goes straight to a bright green that doesn't look natural. Right. I think I'd better stop and paint a few more berries, and then I can show you the leaves and hopefully the finished article at some point soon. Right, I've almost finished the berries. I've just left a little cluster here to show you how to get some variation. So I've got some Cadbury yellow here that I'm going to actually pop down first to bring a little bit of difference and life into this little foreground here. And then it's more or less the focal point, I think, here. So over the top of that, while that's still damp, I'm actually going to pop the red on top and allow some of that lovely yellow to show through, which is going to give me a nice sort of bright orangey colour with lots of life on there and light. And let's have a nice green leaf on the top. Picking up a little bit of that orange as well, just to bring the colour into the leaf at the same time. A little bit of depth. Don't forget your darks. Your darks are always going to make such a nice difference to all of your paintings. Make sure your brush isn't too dry because it's going to drag in the grain of the paper and give you dry marks, which won't give you a smooth edge to your berry, so be careful not to get too dry. I'm going to drop a little bit of water back on there to create some interest and a little bit of life and light. Right, I'll do a similar thing, but this time I'm going to put orange underneath rather than yellow. So getting a little bit of variation in these berries. I see that to an extent in one or two of them, but I've emphasised that idea. Just to create a little bit of variety, a little bit of difference, and to make my picture a bit more interesting. A bit of alizarin underneath, a little bit of the purple, and this time I'm going to go for the nice dark leaves on the top. Forgot about that. Right. He's sitting on his own, so I thought I'd make him look as interesting as I possibly could by making him dark and purple and slightly different. Something to go to, the eye will go here, hopefully, over there, look at him, come back in again. Because it's dark at the edge, so it'll hopefully make the eye then come back into the picture. Right, this is in a lot of shadow because it's underneath some others. So put a bit more depth into that and not too much shine. So all the time you've got to think about what you're doing here, trying to create interest and variety, not talking, and thinking about what you're doing. Right, I think, oh, I've got one more berry here. So I think I'll make that one lighter. It's very difficult not to get them all the same tonal value, but that's something to think about as you work through. So I'll keep that one lighter. And I was thinking if there are some nice areas where I could pop one or two that I haven't drawn, I could do that a bit later. And that will, in a lighter way, which will give you variation in tone. We'll see how that works out. I plan to an extent, but I don't plan everything. I try to allow some things to happen as we go through. But it's good to have an idea of what you want to do, and you've got your drawing as well. Right, so let's try some leaf. As you can see, they have lovely colours in them. So I've almost wiped away my pencil drawing. I usually soften it, but I haven't today, and so it does tend to smudge and move away a little bit. I've just found another little berry that's peeping behind this leaf. So that's another thing to think about. Don't have your berries all sitting with spaces between them. Try to create some perspective with one thing behind another, etc., etc. Okay, let's try some leaf. Start off with the lighter ones over this side, I think. Try not to work on my already painted berries. So I'll pop a little bit of yellow down. Lots of leaves to do, so again, got to try and find some variety in colour, shape and tone. But because there are so many, I'm going to keep them quite loose and not get too detailed with them, and let light come in. Touching a little bit of water back onto a leaf helps to give some texture. Try to remember when you're drawing your leaves and when you're painting your leaves to put the central vein in first, draw one side, then the other side, and paint in the same way. That way both sides are not looking exactly the same, and you will also be getting a nice little light vein in the centre there. So I've got the Windsor Blue red shade and the Aureolin in my little pot, and I'm allowing it to mingle in the centre so that I get variation. And I'm not working wet on wet, but you can if you want to. It's basically I haven't got time to do that, but I'm going to drop sometimes a little bit of water back on, and I'm not following my pencil lines exactly. I'm just using them as a guide. Pencil lines, if you don't want them to be there when you've finished your painting, can always just be when it's completely dry. You can probably erase them afterwards if you don't want them to be there. But I try to soften mine before I start painting usually. They've all got little ragged edges, these leaves. So just try different colours and keep looking to see what you've got in front of you. I've got some burnt sienna here, which might be quite nice just to pop in. Bring the red back into the leaves that you've got going on in the berries. So a little variety of leaf here. They are all looking so different to each other. I must remember to photograph that for you as soon as I've finished doing this so that the leaves don't die before I get it to you. Right, I'll put a bit of stalk in, then I'll stop again because I've actually got quite a lot to do still. It's going to take ages to do these leaves. Right, the stalk is sort of green. More of a sort of olive green actually, or that part of it is. But I've also seen quite a little bit of depth in it, so I've got that purple that I've actually popped in there. Now I'm going to put some water back on to give it some texture and push the paint over to one side so that I get a rounded appearance. Right, I'll just put a few stalks in and then I think I'd better stop and work on the leaves. They have got little thorns. They can either be left out or just popped on. You could just dot a few on at the edges, but don't get too bogged down trying to put all that detail in. Surprised at how long some of the stalks are with the berries. Right, I better stop and do some more leaf and be back soon. Just got a few leaves now to paint at the bottom here to give some balance to the whole thing, and we're nearly there. Trying to put some variety into these. I quickly did the rest, and it helped by the fact that I could turn my pad around, so that enabled me to sort of get at the right angle to actually paint the way I wanted to work, rather than working against myself, etc. So you could always think about, you know, making life easier for yourself by doing something like that. Pop that one going off behind. I don't very often put dark painted veins in like this. A few here and there would be fine, but I actually think they look a little contrived, so I tend to just leave little patches of white paper to indicate veining and the shapes of the leaf, unless I'm painting one with a whole lot of detail. But I think for them not to be blocked in, but to look quite natural with some white patches left, makes them look a little bit lighter and freer. Leaves can get very, very dominant in a picture, and that's something we have to be careful of with painting flowers and things. Having said that, we will be painting some lovely autumn leaves in a bit more detail and putting in all their lovely colours, but that's a different matter altogether. Pop a little bit of yellow back on one of these here. While it's still damp, you can just run other colours in. Putting that central vein in first just gives you helps to get the sort of shape and the way the leaf is actually sitting. So try to remember, it's a hard thing to remember and people don't seem to remember it very well, to be honest, but it actually helps quite a lot to get the right shape and the way that leaf is sitting. And then I only have this side to deal with, and then this side, rather than to have to paint all the way round without having a guide. I think the less work you put into leaves in this sort of a situation, the better really, because then they won't dominate. And there are so many of them. You don't want to get bored with painting them. Mustn't forget it's autumn. We need to be using lovely autumn colours, although I suppose November, literally speaking, isn't autumn. But everything's late again. It's so weird. I've still got loads of flowers in the garden, and here I am trying to find berries to paint. It's all a bit upside down, isn't it? Right, so I think I'm more or less there. Another thing that you could do is use that sepia, or a mix of the sepia and the burnt sienna, and just get the sword brush and put a few little twigs going on in your picture to just create yet more interest. Give something going on at the edges here. And just fill in some of these gaps perhaps and make it look a little bit more authentic, as if, you know, this is all happening in the hedgerow. And all these ideas are good if you don't overdo it. Too much of that would be a bad idea. We have to be subtle with watercolour. But in here, which is the focal point, we could have a bit more going on, I think. So play around with your little sword brush at the end if you feel that it needs just a little bit more going on in your picture. But that's it. And also you could actually just dot a few little ideas of giving the impression that there are some little thorns on there. But again, don't overdo it. Right, that's it. And I'll try not to touch it anymore because I actually quite like it as it is, and I think it's done. So I hope you managed to find something similar to paint this week. And do try to work from life if you can. But I will attach a photo of this subject in case you want to do something similar. But I would say beginners should keep it a little bit simpler and not try to get too complicated, and maybe just paint a smaller branch of these things to begin with, something like that perhaps. And again, as I said before, you can always paint some in the background that might have no drawn lines. Just paint them. You could use different colours for your leaves and things. That one has got some pen on it. It's also got some splattering on it, which actually I could do on here. That always creates nice interest in something like a hedgerow picture. But I prefer you not to go with the pen this week. Maybe we'll do some pen work with berries a bit later on. I'm only showing you this to show you that you can create different colours into your leaves and background if you don't want to go with the greens. But try to use your watercolour because it's a good exercise for using watercolour. Again, this one has got some ink on it, but ignore that. But I would have thought that maybe with those with more experience might want to do something with popping these in a vase or a pot. And some of you have done the blowing of the watercolour before with a straw, and there's some of that going on and some splattering. So feel free to do things like that to create more interest into your berries. Okay, so I'm not sure what I'll be able to find for next week, but hopefully more berries and maybe larger ones and something different. I haven't had any crab apples appearing at the moment, but I may be able to find some elsewhere. Failing that, I might have to go on to some nice colourful leaves, but I was hoping to leave those for a week or two yet. But we'll see what happens. So have a good week and enjoy painting lovely colours in some berries this week. Take care. Bye-bye.